Her pride convinces her she has time. It whispers that nothing is permanent, so she treats love, connection, and loyalty as if they are endless, a resource to draw from whenever she pleases. In her mind, the relationship she lives in can wait, the care she receives can be postponed, and the words left unsaid can wait for the right time. She believes she can push boundaries, trade presence for freedom, and still return when she wants, expecting everything to remain intact. But pride blinds her, and in that blindness she ignores what truly matters until it's gone. When you were there, giving consistency, understanding, emotional safety, she seldom recognized it. She considered it a given. Someone will always be there, so what's the rush to appreciate it? The kindness she accepted without gratitude became a silent foundation she failed to notice. She turned down warmth, overlooked support, dismissed gentleness, assuming it was ordinary and unremarkable. Pride made her believe that what she had was not exceptional, but the mere consequence of convenience. Because of that pride, she delayed emotional investment. She remained distant, she withheld care. She protected her freedom, her ego, her comfort. She judged stability as restrictive, consistency as routine, and closeness as a surrender of autonomy. And while she measured freedom as strength, she overlooked the cost, the gradual loosening of the bond that once seemed secure. She ignored the subtle ways connection frayed under neglect, under complacency, under the assumption that love would always be waiting. In the silence of her neglect, the value of what she had slipped away, the warmth that once felt natural began to fade. The conversations that once ran deep became shallow or rare. The emotional safety she once took for granted lost its shape. She didn't understand how absence doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes it seeps quietly like water through cracks. Because she believed in endless time, the relationship suffered quietly, invisibly, until one day she realized not only the distance was too wide, but that the foundation was cracked. When she finally notices it's too late to return to the same balance, time changed things. Absence created echoing space. What was once given freely now feels distant, conditional, fragile. She cannot rewind moments of care she ignored. She cannot resurrect comfort she dismissed. The silence she assumed would be hers to control becomes the silence she battles with internally. Memories that whisper, feelings that ache, regret that grows louder. Pride had given her a false comfort. You can always come back. But life doesn't wait. People grow, evolve, move forward. The bond she treated as permanent was never guaranteed, and when absence stretched long enough, when neglect severed connection gently yet firmly, what she assumed she could reclaim became unreachable. Stability, once undervalued, now feels like a stranger. Her pride robbed her of presence, and in losing presence, she lost more than a relationship. She lost trust, intimacy, emotional safety, a chance at genuine connection. This is the cost of pride when it blinds you to what matters. It teaches that what seems permanent is fragile, what seems available is precious, what seems ordinary is often a rare gift. And when pride makes you ignore all that, you discover not strength, but emptiness. When a woman carries regret she doesn't openly admit, she begins to move through life with a quiet heaviness she tries to disguise as strength. That is the silent price of her pride, the weight she refuses to show. And one of the clearest signals of this burden is how she suddenly becomes hyper-aware of your absence, even if she pretends she isn't. She starts noticing the small shifts, the slightest distances, the subtle changes in the way you no longer respond with the same warmth you once did. But instead of acknowledging that this touches her, she tries to bury the truth beneath layers of indifference. Her pride won't allow her to show concern, yet her regret forces her to pay attention. She watches your life from a distance in ways you may not notice. She pays attention to the timing of your replies, the tone of your words, the way you no longer initiate conversations like before. Something inside her whispers that she pushed too far, held back too much, or misjudged what she thought would always be available to her. And now she studies you quietly, almost like she's trying to understand where things shifted, trying to decode the consequences of her own actions without admitting she played a role in the outcome. Her regret becomes a mirror she avoids looking into, but her behavior betrays her every time she tries to appear unfazed. She feels the emotional distance more deeply than she will ever express. Pride does not eliminate emotion, it only cages it. So instead of reaching out, she becomes more observant, more cautious, more inwardly conflicted. She senses your energy withdrawing, and it makes her revisit conversations she once dismissed. She replays arguments where she chose silence instead of vulnerability. She re-examines moments where she responded with coldness instead of care. Pride protected her in the moment, but it punishes her afterward. And the more she reflects on the past, the more she realizes how her guardedness pushed away the very connection she now misses. This hyper-awareness changes the way she interacts with the world around her. She becomes more introspective. She begins questioning her own patterns, her choices, her reactions. Regret forces her to grow, but pride makes the process slow and painful. She won't tell anyone she's hurting, but you'll notice it in the way she hesitates before speaking, or how she suddenly withdraws from social noise to think about what she lost. Her mind loops the same question: did I let go of something I wasn't ready to lose? And no matter how much she tries to distract herself, the truth keeps resurfacing. Your absence has become louder than your presence ever was. But beneath all of this analysis and quiet observation, something else is happening. She begins to understand the true cost of pride: silence where there should have been honesty, distance where there should have been openness, hesitation where there should have been courage. And this realization doesn't hit her all at once. It arrives slowly, like an uncomfortable clarity she can't avoid. She becomes aware that regret isn't just a feeling, it's a shadow that follows her because she never said what she truly wanted to say. And the more she becomes aware of this shadow, the more she feels the weight of what could have been. That is the silent price of her pride, living with the truth she never voiced, the emotion she never expressed, and the closeness she assumed would wait for her forever. Sometimes regret arrives too late, and pride is the reason why. There comes a moment when her regret stops being an emotion she suppresses and becomes a force that quietly shapes every decision she makes. And one of the clearest expressions of that regret is how she begins trying to rewrite the past, not by Changi and what happened, but by changing the story she tells herself about it. This is the stage where she starts convincing herself that she didn't really care that much, that you weren't as important as you seemed, that losing you was simply part of her journey. But beneath that narrative lies a truth she doesn't want to face. She is trying to protect her pride from admitting what her heart already knows. And the more she tries to adjust the story, the more emotionally tangled she becomes. She tells herself she had good reasons for reacting the way she did, or that distancing herself was the right move, or that you were the one who misunderstood her. At first, this self-justification seems to give her relief. It gives her something to lean on so she doesn't have to confront the deeper, uncomfortable truth that her silence, her ego, her hesitation played a role in pushing you away. But the mind can only hold on to convenient narratives for so long before reality begins to seep through the cracks. Late at night, when distractions fade, she starts remembering things differently. The memories become clearer, the emotions feel sharper, and the story she tries to rewrite doesn't feel convincing anymore. This inner conflict pushes her into a cycle where she revisits the past again and again, each time seeing it through a new lens. One moment she feels justified. The next, she feels responsible. One moment she believes she made the right choice. The next, she wonders if she let her pride make it for her. This emotional inconsistency becomes one of the heaviest burdens she carries. It drains her, confuses her, makes her restless. She may appear fine on the outside, laughing, posting, working, living, but internally she is wrestling with a version of the past she can't quite settle on. Every attempt to reshape it only reveals how much of it she still feels, and slowly she begins to realize that rewriting the past doesn't change the present. It doesn't bring back what was lost. It doesn't undo the moment she stayed silent when she should have spoken, or the moment she acted strong when she was actually hurting. It doesn't erase the times she pushed you away just to see if you would chase her, only to find out you eventually stopped. Her regret grows not because of what happened, but because of what didn't happen. Because she can now see the moments where vulnerability could have saved everything. This awareness doesn't immediately humble her. In fact, it often makes her more defensive at first, because there's something deeply uncomfortable about realizing that her pride may have cost her something real. But as time passes, the emotional fog begins to lift. She starts seeing the situation with the clarity she once avoided. And this clarity brings a quiet acceptance, the understanding that rewriting the past is just another form of escape. The real work begins when she stops trying to change the story and starts accepting the lesson. And that lesson is simple. Pride can rewrite 100 memories, but it can't undo a single consequence. That is the truth she eventually comes to face. There comes a point in her journey where the weight of regret no longer sits in her mind, it settles into her daily life. And this is where her pride begins to turn into something far more demanding, a silent emotional debt she must keep paying. She starts feeling the consequences not through dramatic breakdowns, but through the small, persistent reminders that something inside her is unresolved. This is the stage where her regret becomes a companion she never invited but now cannot dismiss. It follows her into every quiet moment, every choice, every future connection she tries to build. And though she may never admit it aloud, she knows this is the price of her ID. At first, she tries to outrun it. She fills her days with work, noise, distractions, anything that keeps her from thinking too deeply. She convinces herself that moving on is just a matter of staying busy. She laughs louder, posts more confidently, acts as if life is unfolding exactly as she planned. But the truth is, distraction is not healing. It is only delaying the inevitable. Because the minute she is alone, the silence returns, and with it the thoughts she tries so hard to avoid. She begins replaying the decisions she made, the words she didn't say, the opportunities she let slip through pride or fear. And the more she remembers, the heavier it becomes. Regret has a way of turning ordinary moments into emotional landmines. A familiar song, a phrase someone casually says, a place she passes on the way to work. Any of these can trigger a memory she isn't prepared to face, and each time it happens, she feels a subtle pull backward as if the past is asking her to acknowledge it, not rewrite it. She starts sensing the emotional gap between who she pretends to be now and who she truly was with you. That contrast alone becomes a form of punishment she never saw coming. Even when she tries to move forward with someone new, the remnants of what she lost show up. She becomes cautious, hesitant, guarded. She holds back her emotions not because she doesn't feel them, but because she fears repeating the same mistakes. Yet ironically, it is this fear, born from regret, that prevents her from fully connecting with anyone again. She realizes she gave up something real, something grounding, something that made her feel seen for the sake of appearing strong. And now, every moment of guardedness reminds her of the openness she once had but lost. This is where the silent price becomes undeniable. Pride may have felt powerful in the moment, but it costs her peace long after. The moment is gone. She regrets not just losing you, but losing the version of herself that existed with you, softer, braver, more honest. She begins to understand that vulnerability was not weakness, it was the bridge she burned in the name of protecting her ego, and now she walks alone on the ashes of that bridge, knowing she has no one to blame but herself. The most painful part is the realization that pride does not return anything it takes. It doesn't give back love, it doesn't restore connection, it doesn't rewrite choices. It only demands that she carry the weight of what she lost silently and indefinitely, and eventually she accepts that this is her reckoning, Her pride cost her more than she ever intended to pay. There is a moment when she feels the urge to reach out, to apologize, to explain, or even to return, but something inside holds her back. That something is pride, the same pride that once made her act without considering consequences, the same pride that convinced her to push boundaries, the same pride that told her silence was strength. She wants to close the distance, to reconcile what she feels with what she lost, yet she cannot bring herself to cross the threshold. It's as if pride has become a wall between her and the very resolution she desires. And this tension, this inner conflict, becomes a defining feature of her regret. She feels the pull to reconnect in moments she cannot control. Memories flood in, the laughter, the late-night conversations, the moments of care she once dismissed. They stir a longing she cannot articulate, a recognition of what she truly valued only after it began to slip away. But every time she considers acting on this impulse, pride whispers reminders of what she believes she must maintain: control, independence, dignity. It tells her that reaching out would make her vulnerable, that it would be admitting weakness, that it would be exposing her regret. And so she remains silent, even when every fiber of her being wants to move forward. This struggle manifests in subtle ways. She might check in privately just to see if you're doing okay, but she pulls away before you notice. She may linger on messages she could send but never does. She weighs the cost of appearing needy or desperate against the desire to acknowledge the truth she cannot erase. Her pride dictates restraint while her heart pleads for action. The more she fights this tension, the stronger her regret grows, because the very behavior she once justified as strength is now the very thing that prolongs her pain. It is also in this space that she begins to realize the consequences of lost opportunity. Pride kept her from expressing vulnerability, but now she sees that the gap it created cannot easily be bridged. The apology she imagines will never fully repair what was lost. The explanations she rehearses cannot undo the moments when she acted in ego rather than empathy. She understands, at least on some level, that pride can prevent reconciliation even when the desire is genuine, and the recognition of this truth only deepens her internal struggle, as she must live with the awareness that action is blocked by the very barrier she created. Yet this restraint also teaches her a lesson, though a harsh one. It is in the silence, in the withholding, that she begins to understand the real cost of pride. She learns that dignity built on ego is fragile, that control without humility is temporary, and that relationships thrive not on distance and withholding, but on openness and accountability. Even if she never reaches out, the understanding remains her pride came at a cost, and the awareness of what she cannot undo is inescapable. Her pride may prevent her from acting, but it cannot erase the truth she now carries. As he lives with the tension between desire and restraint, between regret and ego, and it shapes her every thought, every decision, every attempt to move forward. That is the price she pays. The very thing she once considered strength now becomes a barrier to resolution, a reminder that pride is expensive when it costs connection. And eventually, she understands that sometimes the hardest lessons are learned in silence, and the only bridge between regret and growth is the courage to confront it, even if she never crosses it. Even if she never admits it, never apologizes, and never reaches out, her regret remains. It is quiet but persistent, like a shadow she carries with her wherever she goes. Pride may have protected her in the moment, shielding her from vulnerability, but it cannot shield her from the consequences of her own choices. The weight of what she lost lingers, an invisible reminder that every action or inaction has a price. This is the silent consequence of pride. It may allow her to appear strong outwardly, but internally she is paying for it every day. She notices it in small ways first. A pang of longing when she hears a song you once shared. A momentary pause when she sees a place that holds memories of you. An instinctive comparison when she encounters someone new who lacks the depth or presence she once dismissed. Each subtle reminder reinforces the truth she cannot escape. She cannot reclaim what pride cost her. These silent moments accumulate over time, creating a persistent awareness that she lost something meaningful and, importantly, irreplaceable. She may try to distract herself, convince herself she is indifferent, or immerse herself in new experiences, but the truth seeps through quietly yet unmistakably. This regret is not always dramatic or explosive. It does not always show itself in tears or confessions. Often it manifests as quiet awe, afflection, subtle hesitation, or the recurring thought of what if. She begins to see the cost of her choices in the patterns of her current life, opportunities missed, moments that could have been shared differently, and emotional closeness that is no longer available. Pride may have dictated her behavior at the time, but it cannot dictate her emotional reality. And as she lives with this realization, the weight of silent regret becomes a teacher she cannot ignore. She also begins to notice the growth and stability you may have achieved in her absence. That contrast becomes an unavoidable mirror reflecting her decisions. Where she expected weakness, she sees strength. Where she expected dependency, she sees independence. Where she assumed absence would diminish you, she sees that your life continued, perhaps even flourished. That realization intensifies the quiet ache of regret because it demonstrates what she lost not only emotionally, but also relationally. Pride had convinced her that she was in control, but life shows her that control is limited, and the consequences of her choices are permanent. As time passes, she may attempt to rationalize her past actions, explaining them away to herself, framing them as necessary, justified, or unavoidable. But rationalization is temporary, and reality is persistent. The quiet truth remains: her pride cost her a connection she once had and may never regain in the same form. Every attempt to rewrite the story internally cannot change the consequence of absence, the gap created, or the growth she now witnesses from a distance. Regret, silent and enduring, continues to shape her emotional landscape. Ultimately, she learns that the price of pride is not always loud and it is not always visible. Its consequences can remain unspoken, unseen, yet profoundly felt. The silence she experiences is a reflection of what she cannot undo, a reminder that the choices made in ego have enduring repercussions. Even without confrontation, explanation, or reconciliation, the lesson is clear. Pride may protect in the moment, but regret will follow, quietly teaching what words alone cannot. And in the stillness of this understanding, she realizes that regret, though silent, is unavoidable, and it is the teacher she must carry with her.